Hi guys, it's Rebecca. So sometimes when you have to get a horse back into shape after time off, it can be really a daunting task because they don't feel like they did the last time you rode them. And you got to figure out what's a really good way to get them back into shape, not overface them, not do enough, right? So it's like you got to challenge them, but don't challenge them too much. You want them to start exploring their body in a better way and start coming back into where they were last time you rode them. And that can be a little bit complicated. So we're going to go over that today. Okay, so I'm here and I'm watching some of the video that I did last week or that you saw last week or 2 weeks ago on Jovi. And, this is when it was like my first day back under saddle with him. He was actually like oddly behind the leg, not really wanting to walk forward. He was having issues with being crooked. And, he was really wanting to lean into the left, which is kind of his MO, but especially when he's out of shape. And we just kind of had a really inconsistent ride, right? I didn't feel like I could get him connected. I didn't feel like he was nice and forward. I didn't feel like that I really had a solid horse underneath of me. And I really wouldn't expect to, right? So I kept him in shape through the winter, through the 2 months of the really bad weather by doing groundwork and lunging and cavalettis and things like that. But I really didn't get any riding into him. So that horrible video where he just looked a mess, it's kind of like what I would expect because I hadn't been doing anything with them. So then we're going to compare that a little bit to what he looks like now 3 weeks later. And I'm doing this a little bit of an encouragement to you guys so that you see, like, just because you have a bad ride or you have a bad week or whatever, you just keep working away at it, right? And it gets better. And sometimes it can surprise you how much it gets better in such a short period of time. One of the most important things for me when I go to train my horses is that, yeah, they have to work, but I still want them to enjoy the process. I don't want it to be all drudgery for them. So I really try to vary up what I do with them so that not every day is in the ring, schooling something difficult or challenging them in a way that they don't find fun. So I do a lot of different things with my horses to try and keep it variable. And we'll go over that now that we're going over the schedule. So just a refresher, so this is him at the walk about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I did the video, and this was my actual first ride on him. And you notice that he's not really walking through his body. He's wanting to lean to the left, so I'm having to put him in like a little leg yield to the right because he's just kind of like blah and a little stiff. And he was either that day like pulling down in the reins or he was having his nose up in the air. Of course, I didn't really have a good connection with him because I knew it was his first day back and I knew it wasn't going to be all that great. So, but here he walks out a little bit more, but it still is disconnected. It's still kind of cowpokey. It's still not anything that you would want. And then this is the trot work that day toward the end, a little bit better energy, but you notice he keeps wanting to tip his left hip to the inside. He's swishing his tail because he's not really going forward. I have no connection in the reins whatsoever. And he's just leaning left and just kind of going around, which again is what we would expect given that this is my first day back on him, but it's just not a very good picture. And so, this is like, okay, fine, first day back, but let's make it better. So let's contrast that to just the other day. It was super windy out, but if you notice right from the get-go, and the wind kind of tilted my camera, so I'm sorry about that, guys. You notice right from the get-go that his walk's more forward. He's like, even though he's a little behind the vertical, he's like pushing and pulling into the bit a little bit. So there's just this better connection. and there's not that feeling or that look of him just being stuck in his body. He's just nicely walking around. I mean, he could be a little bit more up in the bridle and not tucked behind the vertical, but in all, like, for where he's at, that I'm not really worried about either. And of course, really nice transition up into the trot. And then he has this much more connected looking trot, right? There's no inconsistency. There's a good connection even into my right rein, which is his treble rein. And there's just this nice forward pushing energy that is going, to the bridle. I even feel so confident about the left side that I'm asking for haunches in. So this is how much it's really changed. And you'll see that the next long side, I do a shoulder in, and he has a little bit of a bobble, sort of like mid long side, just where he was like struggling a little bit with really engaging the left hind. But then as you see, he comes around, has a really nice, sorry for the wind again, really nice short side. And then look how nice he comes around and goes into the shoulder in on this side, almost to the, like, it's too much angle. Oh my gosh, like that's awesome, right? Because I can easily correct that. And then he does a half 10-meter circle. And then we do just this little tiny, teeny weeny little half pass over to the left. And then there's this really nice balanced canter to the left. And look how nicely he comes through the turn there. Goes into a little shoulder in before we actually go off into the half pass. And then this is just a nice stretchier trot at the end where we're just kind of trucking along, loosening up. This is, doing nothing fancy. We're just loosening the back up after any challenging work, and just so much better than 3 weeks ago. And that was it for our ride. So going back to this chart that I made a couple weeks ago, we're kind of in this part where we're building ease, strength, and flexibility, and also working on a little joy of movement. And of course, we're always on the correct use of self. And these other parts are added in too, and I'll talk a little bit about how I add them in when I'm talking about, the different activities that we do to try and build that. But so I look at all of this when I'm starting a horse. Well, I'm looking at all of it no matter what I'm doing and when I'm training, but I'm also concentrating on this as I bring them back into shape. Okay, guys, so this is just like a sample. This isn't actually a screenshot of anything of my whiteboard that I have down at the barn where I keep track of all my horses' workouts. But this is sort of a representative of what that would look like. So we'll start right at Thursday, and that would have been February 27th, right? So the L is for lunge. And when I lunge a horse, I do not actually just let them run around on the end of the lunge line. I'm always working on something. So maybe I'm working on freeing their shoulders. Maybe I'm working on them releasing their back. Maybe I'm working on some sort of, groundwork exercise, or an exercise that I'm getting them to learn to move their body around in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe I'm working on cavalettis. Maybe I'm taking them and I'm lunging them out on the hills so that they learn to self-balance on the hills. So lunging can mean a lot of different things, but it's L for lunging. And for this day, if you look at Thursday, the 27th, I did cavaletti work. So that helps all of my horses articulate their joints, release their back, and also free up their shoulders a little bit. So for that day, I did that. And sometimes you'll see I'll mark down how long I worked on it, but we'll just keep going. So then the next day, I was on Jovi. So usually, unless I mark like an L for lunging or GW for groundwork, it means I'm on the horse. And so on Friday the 28th, I just got on him and walked him around. Again, this is fictitious. I don't really know what I did on February 28th. Okay, so then I didn't get to work on Saturday the 1st or Sunday the 2nd of March. And so the 3rd I worked him, and I did lunge, and I did walk trot, and I did cavaletti. So if I say walk trot, that means I didn't canter, right? So sometimes I will say walk trot canter. Sometimes I'll just say walk. Sometimes I'll say walk trot. And that's all so I know in my head, like what I worked on that day and what might need to be worked on following days. And then on the 4th, I actually got on him bareback. So a lot of times if I'm really tight for time, if I, get home from work and I've got 15 minutes of daylight or something like that, I will get on my horse's bareback. All my horses ride bareback. I have a little, I think, thin line bareback pad that's pretty comfortable. I like all my horses to be safe to go bareback. It's part of the way that I start my horses so that they're good for the bareback pad. And I also sometimes feel like I have better connection with them with my seat if I ride bareback. I also feel that it sometimes frees up their back in a better way that I can't explain it, but there's days that I really feel like I'm able to access their back better bareback. And a lot of times I'll do I'll do walk trot, I'll do walk trot canter, I'll work on lateral work. I won't do extended gaits because that's just like too hard for me to sit, or I won't do flying changes if I'm teaching them flying changes. Like I keep myself safe, but I will hack them out and stuff like that. So anyhow, on Tuesday the 4th, we did bareback walk trot. So I'm just giving you an idea of like, this is how I introduce work back to a horse that's had time off. I don't work them every day. I don't work them every day in an arena. So then on the 6th, I just walk and I take them out for a hack. So I just do a walk hack around the property. And then on the 8th, I go back in the arena again. And now I'm doing walk trot and I'm doing lateral work. So if it's just that I'm starting back, then lateral work might mean just leg yield, right? So, and if I want to put that, like that, that's all I did, I would put LY for leg yields as opposed to, half pass or haunches in or shoulder in or something like that. And then on the 9th, I actually did groundwork. So when I do groundwork, it's a little Tristan Tucker style. It's also a little bit of Kathy Sierra style where and I have some videos where I've done groundwork with my horses on this platform. So you can go back and look and kind of see how I do that. Sometimes I work on haunches in work. Sometimes I work on shoulder in work. Sometimes I work on, stuff out in the fields. Sometimes I'm asking them to go to the whip with their front legs. Sometimes I'm asking them to sit and do, an idea of a half step or a half step if they're trained in that. So that's all groundwork. My groundwork is really about getting them to loosen up their body and to self-organize. And I think I've talked about that before, but that self-organization, there is so much you can do if you can train groundwork on cues to really get them to self-organize. That will help you a ton when you go to ride horses. So that groundwork day, it sounds like an easy day as far as I didn't have to tack up and all of that, but it's a really integral part of my training process. So then I didn't get to ride Monday. Tuesday then, the 11th, I actually, for the first time, introduced canter, right? So that was walk trot canter, and I took about 20 minutes. And then on Thursday, the 27th, I lunged again, and I really worked on Jovi's thoracic region. So we've talked about before that sometimes he can start to get a little downhill, and then his withers get buried. And so when I'm lunging him and stuff, there was activities that I will do. I can point the whip at his shoulders. I can also get him to free up his shoulders by coming at the whip. And I can also do the cavalettis, walk cavalettis over in different angles so that it helps him free up his thoracic region and really gets his thoracic sling developed without my weight on him, right? And that's one of the big things, if you go back and look at this video again, that you will see from 3 weeks ago and now is how much he's able to bring his thoracic sling engaged and free up his front end and look more like, more like a packaged horse, right? Sorry, my camera's sliding. Okay. And then the 15th is a hack walk trot canter. The 16th, I did groundwork, and this time I tried to work on his pelvic region. The 18th, I did walk trot, and I worked on haunches in. Okay. And then the 20th, I did walk trot canter, and I did lateral work. And then the 22nd, I worked a little bit on collection. Well, this could mean any sort of collection. If you have a first level horse, the amount of collection that you're asking is going to be like second level. If you have a third level horse, the amount of collection you would be asking would be like fourth level, because you're training them for more. And that might just be 2 minutes, but it's not even that like this is exactly what I did this month, but I'm just trying to show you a little bit of how I keep my records so that you have an idea of like how I train. And then on the 23rd, then, which we haven't even gotten there yet, so we know this is fictitious, is we did walk trot and we did hills. So this is how I vary it up. So I'm having days that I'm like out and about in the fields where the horses like to work more. They like find it exciting to go out and just not be in the arena. And then I have other days that I'm just in the arena. And then I have other days that I'm challenging them to self-organize. I'm not on them. I can't influence their body in the same way, so they have to self-organize themselves. And then there's other days that I'm working on a specific region that I want to strengthen, like their thoracic sling or their pelvis or their lumbopelvic junction. And then there's other days that I'm doing cavalettis or something, or I'm doing hills or something like that. So I just wanted to give you an idea of like what that looks like, because so many dressage trainers just go to the arena every day and they work on, some part of what, they need for their test or something like that. And it's really not conducive for the horse's development. I was talking to a client recently, and we were talking about a trainer that we both used to ride with, who had this amazing ability to kind of take you through all these exercises and then, just be like, okay, sit up. And it's not that we were hunched over and not sitting up before, but somehow you would just sort of like, oh, okay, I'll sit up a little bit more. And then boom, your horse was just in this amazing frame and just felt amazing and was in total self-carriage. And, at the time I was like, oh my gosh, how does he do this? How does he ride this horse through me, from the ground and get this amazing result with so many different horses? And the only other person that I have kind of seen this happen is Anya Baran. If you watch any of her videos, she's just really concentrates on lateral work and all these suppling kind of exercises. And I actually read, and I don't know who the rider was, like actually went to go spend time with her. And that's what he said that you do. It's just all these moving body parts this way and that way, and just really suppling the horse and getting them so through and so like happy in their bodies. And it's not just like on the bit and forward. It's very, very, very different. And I always try and keep that thought in the back of my head of like, when I'm working a horse, how can I make each one of their body parts feel better? Even if I'm not the best rider, and I'm not the best trainer, and I obviously do this not professionally at all. But that's sort of what I think in my head as I'm going through this. And then if you look on the 23rd, so this is a little bit more of like how my chart would look down the barn, because I have 3 horses that are in training. So like Teddy might have worked on half steps that day, and Romeo, he got started last year, and you guys will get to see him. He's a really cool horse. I will start making some videos of him, because I'm actually restarting him, because what I do is I start my horses, like maybe 60, 90 days as 3-year-olds. And that's very light 60, 90 days, meaning like from actually, bringing them out in the cross ties, or from actually introducing the saddle to actually walk trot and maybe a little bit of canter. And then I throw them back out again for the winter and let them grow up. And there's a huge change that you will see in them developmentally between 3.5 and 4. And then you'll see another large jump between 4.5 and 5, and then another large jump between 5.5 and 6. So Jovi just turned 6, and there's just this huge difference in him this year in both like just his body look and also his strength. I like to start horses as 3-year-olds, but it's very, very, very mild. I do not ride them much. I do not show them. If I take them off the property, that's just like in hand to get them off the property and get them to see different things. I'm a real advocate for not starting them too soon. I like to mentally get them engaged at 3 and 4, but I'm not training hard at 3 and 4. So I just want to like say that. So you'll see, I will introduce you to Romeo. He's just another really cool personality. Very different from all my other horses. So I've had to do things differently with him. So you'll get to enjoy getting to know him too, just like I have. So that's it. That's my schedule. That's how I, start to get my horses back into shape. This is my schedule that works for me for having a full-time job and no indoor. And it may be that I have 3 days I can't ride because, it rained or something like that. Or we had really, really windy weather, or it was super cold or something. And then usually the first day back, I will be doing some sort of lunging or groundwork, just to get, and it's not because all my horses are super safe to get on, even in bad weather, because part of my life is that they have to be like, so I have to be able to ride in different weather conditions. I have to be able to ride after dark sometimes. So they kind of have to just fall into the program. And I introduce it very slowly, meaning, my 4-year-old, I won't ride after dark, but I will go out and lunge him after dark and things like that, and get him used to that environment so that he will be later on this year, he'll be safe to ride after dark. And all of them kind of have to learn that because of the constraints that I have on my own schedule. And it's good to have them ride in the rain sometimes, as much as you hate to get your tack wet, because sometimes you're at a show and it starts raining in the middle of your test. And you want to be able to finish your test if you made it that far. So it's good to ride them in different weather conditions too, because you never know what you're going to get at the show. And yeah, so I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to say for today. I hope that helps you guys understand a little bit of, fitness from just another perspective. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.